All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be practicing subtracting mixed numbers. Our goal is that everyone will be able to do this even when borrowing and simplifying are involved. So, let's look at an example here. You probably remember doing something similar to this borrowing whenever you were in younger grades, like maybe third grade or even second grade, and you have a problem like this: 73 minus 26. When we realize that we can't take 3 minus 6 here because 6 is too many, then we have to borrow. And we borrowed from the 7, and it became a 6. This 6 actually stands for 60, and we have to remember that when we're borrowing this, it makes, and you put a little 1 in front of the 3, or maybe you crossed it out and put 13 above it. And the reason we did this was because this is the tens place, and you just borrowed 10. That 7 actually stands for 70. And when you borrowed 10 and made this 13, now it stands for 60. Well, in fractions, it's slightly different. And we have to kind of recall why we added the 1 or added 10 to the ones place when we borrowed originally. I want to start by doing a few practice problems adding mixed numbers first. If we can recall those steps, it'll make the steps for subtracting mixed numbers that much easier. So go ahead, pause the screen, and try to solve these problems. Then we'll go over them. All right. So what was the step that you used first when we're adding mixed numbers? Okay, convert to a common denominator, and if the denominators are already the same, then what? That's right, we need to add the numerators. And when we do that, we get 12 ninths. 12 ninths needs to be simplified though. And when we simplify that, we actually get 1 and 3 ninths. And that can also be simplified into 1 and 1/3. Now what? Add the whole numbers. So we get 5. And now we need to add the whole number sum along with that mixed number that we got for adding the two numerators. When we add those together, 6 and 1/3. How did you do? Let's look at the other one. Here we have to convert to a common denominator first. What would our common denominator or least common denominator be? That's correct, 4. Because the least common multiple between 2 and 4 is 4. Now when we convert 1/2, we need to multiply by 2 over 2 to get the equivalent fraction 2/4. And now it's simple. All we have to do is add those numerators together, and 1/4 plus 2/4 is 3/4, and add the whole numbers, and we get our answer 6 and 3/4. Now those steps are also going to help you very much so when subtracting mixed numbers. So let's look at our example here. Step 1, when we're subtracting mixed numbers, we need to convert to a common denominator, just like we did with adding mixed numbers. So in our example, we have 5/8 and 3/4. What is the least common denominator between 4 and 8? That's right, eighths. So we go ahead and convert to our common denominator. Now, similar to the example that we had before, when we had 73 minus 26, we have a bigger number here than what we have up here. We can't take 6 away from 5. A common mistake that students make is they will take 6 minus 5, but that's not correct. What we have to do is borrow. Now, when we borrow from the 4 and make it a 3, we borrowed 1 whole. I can't just add a 10 here, because that would be like I'm adding 10/8, and that's more than 1 whole. We need to borrow 8/8, or add 8/8 to that fraction. So our second step is to subtract the numerators and borrow if necessary. When we're subtracting here, we have to borrow the 1, add the 8/8. So now we have 13/8 minus our 6/8. And when we subtract those, we get, finally, our correct answer of 7/8. Don't forget, step 3, subtract the whole numbers. 3 minus 1, since you borrowed, is equal to 2. Now, we can write the whole numbers as and the proper fraction as a mixed number. So we're just going to move this 2 down here, and we will move the 7/8 down here as well, and write it as a mixed number. So it's as simple as that. Convert to a common denominator, borrow if necessary, and subtract the numerators, then subtract the whole numbers and combine those two differences. Let's do some practice problems. Here we go. Start out and do the first two, and then we'll go over them. Okay, let's see how you did. Whenever you took 2 and 1/6 minus 1, did you realize that it's actually 1 and 0/6? Now we have a common denominator, and we can subtract the numerators. When we subtract 1 minus 0, we end up with 1/6, and 2 minus 1 is 1. Let's check the next one. 3/4 minus 1/4 is 2/4, and 3 minus 1 is 2. What's wrong with this problem? That's right, 2/4 is not simplified, so we need to divide by 2 over 2 and simplify to 1/2. Now we can figure out what our answer is in simplest form, and we get 2 and 1/2. These next couple are tricky. When I look at the first one, I can't do 1/5 minus 2/5. So I need to, borrow. If I borrow 1 whole and my denominator is 5, how much am I going to add to this? That's right, 5/5 would be equal to a whole. So I look at my denominator and I make sure I have 5/5. If my denominator were 4, I'd add 4/4, because that's equal to 1. Together, I now have 6/5, and I can subtract 6/5 minus my 2/5 to get my new answer of 4/5. Subtract the whole numbers to get 2. And finally, now we can combine those answers, and we have 2 and 4/5. Let's look at that very last one. Did you realize that this is actually 4 and 0/4? We can't do 0 minus 3, or we can't take away 3 from 0. So we're going to borrow. The 4 becomes a 3, and we add 4/4. Now I can subtract 4/4 minus 3/4 is 1/4, and 3 minus 1 is 2. And that is how you subtract mixed numbers when borrowing is involved. Well, I hope this helped you out. See?